Our brewery is called Border X, and it's truly because we're crossing borders. We live in such different worlds, but at the same time, we love things in both of them. And as an immigrant, you get this incredible opportunity to pull from this reservoir of culture, history, tradition, all of that from both places, and really put it together in ways that have never been put together.
Let's start off with your name, who you are. Let's talk about your family,
Yeah,
and we'll move on from there.
sure.
Yeah.
My name is David Favela. I'm one of the owners of Border X Brewing. It's a family-owned business. Originally started in Otay Mesa in 2013, expanded to Barrio Logan, and just this year on March 2nd, we opened our second brewery tasting room in the great city of Bell. I come from a large family. There's 7 of us total. I'm the youngest of 5 boys. So I'm kind of the rebel, the one who doesn't listen to the rules and gets away with everything. And I think that's kind of distinguished my whole life. My parents are immigrants from Durango, so they're norteños, and that's had a huge impact on my life as well. We would go back every summer as a child, so Mexico to me is a place that's not far away, but a place where I formed a lot of, great memories and great experiences, and that's something that informs my experience here in the U.S. as much as, the time I've spent here.
Let's go into that with your parents, right? What did your dad do back in Mexico?
Sure.
Or your mom, what did they do?
Sure. So in Durango, my family's from La Sierra, which is just the mountains. People would live in ranchitos, which would be 2 or 3 houses. Usually people were related to each other and would farm cattle, grow corn, squash, everything they basically needed. And would alternate from being in the mountains, La Sierra, during the summertime, and then moving to the city or the pueblo during the winter time when it was too cold to stay up in La Sierra. And they had done that for centuries. And my dad decided to come to the US when it was no longer viable to have that kind of lifestyle. He immigrated to Chicago back in the 60s when it was much easier to get a visa, and was blessed to be able to find a job in construction. And so he worked in concrete finishing, which is actually a very skilled trade, and was able to earn a great living for him and his children and his large family. Again, there were 7 of us. And he moved into Southern California back in 1965 after Chicago. And I was born there in San Diego in 1967.
And you're originally from Otay?
No, I'm actually from Escondido,
Okay.
although I was born in Encinitas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Talk to me about where you grew up. Talk to me about your childhood. Talk to me about what were your early memories?
Sure. So I was born in San Diego. I grew up in Escondido. The earliest memories I have is again of being the rebel. When I started kindergarten, I didn't know English. In the household, we only spoke Spanish. And that actually created a lot of issues. The school district didn't know what to do with me. There was no such thing as ESL back then. I was one of very few Latino families in Escondido. And so the problem was, most of the teachers couldn't speak Spanish. I couldn't speak English. So there was no communication. And what it triggered in me was just a total disinterest in school. And when you get disinterested, what is that saying? Idle time is devil's time, or idle hands are the devil's hands.
Yeah.
And I got into a lot of trouble. I failed 2nd grade 3 times. 3 times, let me repeat that to be clear. I got to the point where they actually labeled me learning disabled because of the intelligence test I took in English that I couldn't obviously answer. And I was sent to a school that was across town. And I actually sat in a small room with special ed teachers with other students who were truly, challenged. And I was trapped. That could have been the end of my story and the beginning of a very sad one. But I was blessed in that it was such an awful experience. I would hide out at the school, and since it was so far away, there was no way for me to go back home. You couldn't ditch, it was a bus ride, an hour bus ride to get to the school. So what do? You hide out in the library. And in the library, there are tons of books. And I remember picking one down, opening up the page and seeing a woman's face with snakes for hair. And I was like, what the hell is this? I couldn't read the words, but the curiosity triggered something inside of me where I had to learn. And I learned how to read English just by studying Greek mythology. And within a year, obviously, I became a bookworm. So I went from learning disabled to bookworm. And they bumped me up from second grade straight into fourth grade.
Wow.
I skipped third. And then from that moment on, I just read like crazy. And I think that really was one of the most impactful things. My parents taking me to Durango, being in La Sierra, riding horses, herding cattle. I mean, living the life. And it just really opened my eyes to where they came from, what their background and history was. And then I would be back in, San Diego, and it's a totally different existence. I'm sure there are a lot of people that'll watch this video that kind of understand where I'm coming from with that. But it's a really kind of mind-blowing experience to be subject to those two kind of totally different realities.
I lived through the same thing. I'm half Guatemalan, half Mexican, but I mostly grew up Mexican. It just dominated our household. My mom's from Sinaloa, from Rancho close to Culiacan. So I understand that reference that you're saying, because I used to go over there and just, it's free for all. Let me do this, let me do that. But it's free, and you come back here and everything's structured, but it's different.
Yeah.
It would take me literally 2 weeks for me to just get back into the role again, and like, oh, okay, I'm in the U.S. now. This is what happens. This is how I speak. This is what I have to do. These are the social rules. This is what. Talk to me about your experience in Durango. Like, when you went out there, what was your favorite thing to do once you got to the rancho? Because I know from the Sierra, I know it's a little bit even more wild than it is in the cities and the pueblos. Talk to me about how did it impact you?
So as I mentioned, I come from a large family, but my father's family was 12. So 12 uncles and aunts and their kids and families, which were very large, and many of them were still in Durango. Tepehuan is Durango. And so me and my cousins, we were a tribe. We were like 15, 20 strong at a time. We would pile into one of those big pickup trucks with the lumber racks on it. And I would sit over the cab in the basket, holding on for dear life. And I was only like 8, 9 years old. And we would be tearing around La Sierra.
We would do this thing, I guess in the US they call it noodling or whatever, where you reach around rocks, and if you feel something, you just grab it. The tricky thing was that sometimes you'd grab it and pull it out, and there would be river snakes, and so you didn't know what you got. You either got a fish or you got a snake, so I guess you win either way.
And how did that play a role in your in the way you saw life, like the way you handled yourself?
Oh, it's defined my character, defined my point of view. Our brewery is called Border X, and it's truly because we're crossing borders. We live in such different worlds, but at the same time, we love things in both of them. And as an immigrant, you get this incredible opportunity to like pull from this reservoir of culture, history, tradition, all of that from both places, and really put it together in ways that have never been put together. So making Mexican craft beer, well, that didn't exist before. And because we're able to do that as immigrants, it's really a defining experience for us. And it comes from all those childhood memories of, growing up in La Sierra, Durango, Sinaloa. I have cousins there. And so we were right there in that zone. And we think it's a beautiful thing. So, we look at that process and we say, you're a subject, you've picked and pulled from whatever you like the most. And you create it yourself from the best, from both sides of your family, from both cultures and the U.S. So you have 3 cultural treasure troves from food and traditions and memories to kind of create the person that you are. And I think that's something to be celebrated, that uniqueness that ability to make ourselves into what we want to be able to pick and choose, is priceless.
And be able to jump and
Absolutely.
understand cultural norms that don't require words. That it's just I can jump from here to there and understand.
Absolutely.
Understand my surroundings, understand the local population, understand just people. I think that makes more people people.
I think people that can cross borders, like you said, and be effective in any different, it's just a great life skill. And it's something I learned early on. I could be in Montana. I was a forest firefighter in college, and so we'd go around, and I could code shift into, okay, I'm in Montana. I'm hanging out with a bunch of cowboy firefighters, and we're in a saloon. Rather, the thing is, the great thing about culture is sometimes the roots go so deep, people lose track of where they even started. A cowboy is a vaquero. A vaquero is a cowboy. The dress, the traditions, they just dress it up differently. And we're guilty of the same thing. Did you ever try saladitos growing up?
Mm-hmm.
You think those are Mexican?
I thought so.
They come from China. So when the ships would come to Mazatlan or the different ports, that was one of the goods that they would unload there, and they're incredibly popular in China. And when I traveled there, I realized these are saladitos. No, these are salted plums. Okay.
Yeah, and what is Mexican now? See what I'm saying?
Exactly.
In Sinaloa, we have a lot of Japanese and Chinese influence because of the railroad. So the railroads we have in Mexico were built by the Chinese and Japanese.
Totally.
And of course local Mexicans and the indigenous. But Los Mochis was founded by Japanese and Chinese.
Yeah.
And so it was founded by this British guy, but the people who built the town are Japanese and Chinese. So, but talk to me about the 70s, right? So you grew up here, you grew up in 65.
Yes.
You were born in 65, so you grew up in the 70s, right? Well, I don't think you remember that part.
70s, 80s, 90s,
right.
70s.
But talk to me about the 70s growing up in San Diego.
It's a wonderful time. I mean, I remember being taught how to dance disco by my older sister. I mean, the Bee Gees, Michael Jackson, all that jazz. It was a lot of fun. Those were some of the biggest memories during that time period. Muscle cars. My brothers were all into muscle cars. They had Dodge Challengers, and one older brother got into lowriders, and it was just being the younger brother of a big family like that is actually such a blessing that I got exposed to so many different things. And just as I'm a unique expression of the immigrant experience, they were all in their own kind of process as well. So you could have a lowrider brother, a muscle car brother, another brother who loves Baja bugs, so he's all into the bug scene. And it's like we're all over the place.
Let's talk about school.
Yes.
Right? So you went to high school. Did you have like a culture shock, or was it like how tough was middle and high school? Because those are the times that I found challenging when I was growing up.
Yeah, my story is interesting. As I mentioned earlier, my elementary school experience was rough. I was diagnosed learning disabled. I was sent across town to a learning disabled classroom. I mean, it was rough. I hated it. But when I discovered to read, it lit a fire in me to acquire knowledge through reading. I couldn't stop. I mean, I
like reading.
Yeah. People like reading. I like reading more than sleeping or eating. Let me put it that way. I almost burnt the house down because my mom told me to turn the light off and go to bed. So I took the light underneath the blanket. Eventually fell asleep as I was reading, and then the light actually lit the blanket on fire and smoked up the room, and my mom yelled at me so much for that, but I couldn't stop. And so by the time I was graduated from elementary, junior high, I was already reading at the high school, college level. I had read the thickest book. To me, any new school or library, I'd find the thickest book that was out there. And for those of you that are wondering, it was Little Women in elementary school. That was the thickest book. I read it 2 or 3 times just for bragging rights. And I enjoyed it. And then as I went through high school, I kind of opened up another kind of chapter in my life, which was I was all about sports. And so while the reading took a back seat, I still read a lot, but I also played a lot of sports. Wrestling, football, track were my key 3 sports. Wrestling eventually became my love, and I did that exclusively. But college or high school was this really interesting experience where I really enjoyed it. I had a wonderful high school experience, but I never really exerted myself I didn't have to. I just did enough to get by. And but it was very interesting my senior year for two reasons. One, most of my brothers and sisters have gone to college, but when I asked the counselor, should I take the practice SAT, she said, don't worry about it. You don't need it. Mexicans are good with their hands. You will find a vocational career that matches your intelligence. And, you know, unfortunately back then I just took that and listened to her. But the great thing is I also was in that time in a biology class, and I loved that biology class so much. It was a self-paced biology class that I finished the curriculum like halfway through the year. And the teacher was like, wow, you really rocked it. You want to do, what else are you going to do for the rest of the year? And I said, well, can I do a special project? And I wanted to study the steroids impact on the human body. And I went to a medical school, UCSD, to really get medical journals and do a serious like research project. Well, this was just me nerding out and having fun. But, and then I would go surfing from La Jolla, I'd just go down from the library and surf in the afternoon. But that actually generated, he nominated me for my first academic award. And so I had the first experience of actually inviting my parents to school and not being in trouble, but actually winning an award. And so it was really a life-changing experience because they were in the audience, and you know, they're looking up there and they're like, what are we here for? What's going on? This is the kid that gave us ulcers growing up our whole lives, and now he's winning an academic award? That makes no sense. But they were very proud and very happy, and it was like,
How did that make you feel?
oh, phenomenal. I was like, whoa, something interesting and difference going on. And it kind of lit the fire that if I really applied myself, that reading had actually informed me and built my intellect to the point where, although I didn't exert myself in high school, I actually was very capable of succeeding in any topic. And so I went to college. I went to community college for just like a semester. And my brother said, what are you doing? Come up to college and, you know, get into it. And he was at Chico State. And I went up there for a road trip. And I loved it so much. I came back again with the fire lit and was like, vamonos. And so I finished off my courses, managed to pull off a great SAT score that got me into a special program, EOP, Educational Opportunity Program. And boom, I'm in Chico State. And it's, you know, I think having physical location changes allows you an opportunity to reinvent yourself and decide who you want to be. And I wanted to be a more academically inclined person. I was going to wrestle up in Chico, but after 2-a-day practices, I realized there was no way I was going to succeed as a student and an athlete. Kudos to all those who can pull it off. I couldn't.
It's one of the toughest times for someone, for an athlete within a university to get done with all that school reading, plus go to practice, plus wake up for early practice, plus go to the tournament. So yeah, it's hard.
It's hardcore. You're cutting weight. It is. You can't half-time wrestling. You are a full-time wrestler, and you try to get the academics done. So I exerted myself in that first semester. I got straight A's. I was on the dean's list, academic excellence, and every quarter after that, I was always, you know, straight A's. And it just became this thing where I found if I just hit the button, I had prepared myself through this reading that I discovered as a child to almost succeed in any field. Economics, history. History is my love. Economics is my second. But literature, writing, it's just a whole new chapter in my life opened up. By the time I almost graduated, I applied for multiple scholarships, won many of them. The one I'm most proud of is I was awarded the Woodrow Wilson Fellowship.
Wow, okay.
And I went to Princeton University.
Wow, okay.
So it was a super great honor, and I was in the cohort of other students who had also excelled similarly. And it was really an incredible experience. I mean, I was on a trajectory where like, oh, if you really try hard, you know, you can get to places.
And so you go to Princeton. Talk to me about Princeton. Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so it was really a phenomenal experience being accepted to Princeton as a Woodrow Wilson Fellow. It's a special honor that you keep with you your entire life and career, and something that identifies you. And it was given to scholars and students, activists who are both academically strong, but also have demonstrated um, a willingness to give back to the community. And so I was in migrant ed. I taught migrant students. I was at the study center. I gave study classes to all kinds of students. I helped SAT prep for local high school students. So I did. I was very involved in education. I love teaching. I love public speaking. So it came very natural to me.
You got what you went through,
Yes.
and you took the experience from that, and you brought it into your own personal life, which then you executed by helping others.
Absolutely.
Because you experienced it, so you knew what they were feeling, what they were thinking, what they saw around the surroundings. You understood maybe the discrimination at the same time, the not understanding you.
Yeah.
Right. So you
Yeah.
took that and you ran with it and you helped them. Okay?
Absolutely. So that was a transformative impact on my life because there are tips and tricks to become better students that I learned for myself that I helped teach others. But yeah, there was a sharing of understanding. I mean, I went from one radical extreme, learning disabled, was not going to be able to accomplish much, to being accepted to Princeton University. And you can't imagine a wider divide between those two things.
Right.
So, but I understand that everyone has that potential in them. And I think it's a question of having the confidence to tap into it, but also having the tools to know how to take notes, to know how to take tests, to figure out the rules of the game and win in that game.
So I'm a student right now and I'm struggling with history tests.
Yeah.
It's pretty boring. A lot of people don't like it.
Yeah.
I'm bored. The professor, they do their job, but it's not like they just follow the standards, right?
Yeah.
What are some tips that you can give a student to learn better, to understand the material, to actually fall in love with it? Not fall in love with it, but at least get through it so they can get a good grade.
Well, there's two strategies you can use. One is it's more mechanical. Learn the details, learn the processes, methodologies, like flashcards. Simple thing like flashcards is a huge aid in being able to digest a lot of dates and things that you'll never remember again, right? And sometimes that is very, very appropriate. But the other thing is, the human brain is a really wonderful thing. If it decides that what it is trying to learn is useless and not of interest to it, it actually fights against you to remember anything. So you have to open up your mind and say, okay, what could possibly be interesting of, England at the turn of the century, Industrial Revolution? Who cares about that? What does it mean to us today? And I think this is where imagination comes in and empathy. If you can try to project yourself back into that time and really understand as a human being, not just as characters in a book with long dry wigs, but really understand what that time period was about. Imagine those people as real people making choices about their life, about government, and the context in which they did that. Your brain now is engaged, more neurons are actually being applied to the retention. And then if you talk to other people about it and genuinely have an interest, this stuff comes like easily. I mean, if you think about economics seems dry, who cares, But when you ask about, well, why did we pick our economic system? What were our other options that we could have lived by? What are the pros and cons? How did we end up at where we're at today? What does it mean to our parents? And so I wrote, for example, a paper on the economics of my father's life. And so think about it, okay? So he was in La Sierra de Durango. He had to leave. Why? Well, because he was in an agricultural environment. His father, my grandfather, was fairly wealthy for a person. Now take his wealth and divide it into 12 chunks. And now, so everyone's got a very tiny slice. And it got to the point where the productivity of my father to feed his family and earn money to save was not possible anymore. There's just not enough arable land. Oh, what else happened? Oh, commodity prices after World War II came down dramatically. Why? Because the war was over. People were returning to production. And so now that corn that used to get, $5 per pound is now only worth $2.50. His principal money-making crop was corn. He's out of business now because he can barely cover his costs. What choice does he have? He ain't going to become a programmer. So what does he do? He goes to Mexico City, gets his immigration pass, gets his visa to come to the U.S. and gets a job. So economics are all around us. The choices we make in our lives, how they impact our community, are all around us. And I'll give you one last example. Why did he go from Chicago to San Diego? Oh, because San Diego was beginning to boom. Why? Because Reagan had this military policy where he was building up the military. Oh, what does that matter? Well, a ton of military contractors are located in San Diego. They suddenly had, billions of dollars of extra contracts that they had to staff for. So they start hiring people. Those people need homes. So he becomes a cement contractor. So my dad finished off tract homes all through San Diego that came through that boom in the 70s and 80s. Like, oh, damn, snap. It's like economics is all around you. If you don't understand how it's shaping your life, you're living in a bubble, and you got to burst that bubble.
So you're in Princeton.
Yes.
And what are you doing there? You're studying Latin America history?
So my interest is all the students that were picked were students of high academic standards with an interest in public policy and improving the world. A little bit of that idealist in us. That's the Woodrow Wilson designation. All of us wanted to do it in different ways. The particular way I wanted to do it is I wanted to apply my knowledge of economics and history and understand how to help communities like the ones my dad came from. Because I think, there's so much immigration discussion going on, but I'll tell you what, my parents loved where they lived. That's where their heart and souls were. It takes a lot for someone to pick up everything and move somewhere else. So my impetus was, how do I help communities stay where they are, earn a good quality of life, and be able to enjoy, their history and their traditions of where they're from. And so I want to do Latin American economic development. And so that's what I studied. We had top scholars, top advisors in the program. But the one thing, I'll leave you with this about Woodrow Wilson, it was a series of classes that we took. But the culmination was a gentleman who was giving the final speech to us and goes, I know you're all idealists and you want to do good in the world. And he said, here's how you do it. You take all that intelligence and hard work and you become a business owner. You become wealthy. Whatever means, you use the system to be wealthy. But you keep your morals, you keep your vision, you keep your objectives, and use that wealth to influence public policy, to contribute to nonprofits, and to basically use it as power and a tool to do the good that you're trying to do. Because when it comes to public policy, it's not always up to you. But when it is your money, it is up to you. And now you can apply that policy, initiative any way that you want. So it really transformed my life, So I came back thinking, oh my gosh, I thought I was going to be in public policy working for government and nonprofits. I'm going to switch gears here and I'm going to do international management. So then I went to UCSD and within 2 years, and then I got a job with Hewlett Packard and did exactly what that professor said for 22 years.
So you come back, you start off your career, right?
Yeah.
And let's talk about how you got into the brewery business. Do you want to talk about something before this? Talk to me about, you come back.
Yeah.
You're back home, right?
Yep.
Now you're in a profession.
Yep.
And you're a manager now, right?
Yeah.
You're managing this big business, and you're part of the culture now of that business, right? How's your personal life looking there?
Yeah, so after working at Hewlett Packard for 22 years, where I became an executive and managed many different businesses, my brother and my two nephews decided to start up a small brewing company. And initially we had no dreams of blowing up or doing anything great. It was just, we're going to make great beer, and if we can have enough family and friends to pay our monthly rent, we had no employees, it'd be great, it'd be fun. That was the plan. Day one, when we rolled up the metal curtain door on our grand opening, there was a line of about 50 people waiting to come in. Now, bear in mind, we can only comfortably fit maybe 30. So when we opened, we had a line immediately. And we were blown away. We didn't know what the heck was going on. We'd done a little social media postings. We'd done a little bit of work, but not much. And yes, we had 50 people come in. The place was packed. And we ran out of beer the first day because we were brewing very small batches. And we knew we had tapped into something, though. There was something very important going on that we weren't aware of. We hadn't consciously thought about it. But later on, when we opened our second tasting room in Barrio Logan, we understood what was going on because customers would speak to us. And what they were saying is, we love your brewery because you're Latinos and you're representing, because of the delicious beer you make using our culture and our recipes and our traditions. And we love that because you're respecting us. You're giving us a place where we can come and feel respected. And you're filling it with Chicano art. There's rock en español. Like, the whole vibe is 110% focused on Latinos, but in a more contemporary way. We weren't trying to come off as colonial hacienda days or anything. We were coming at it from a modern immigrant Latino perspective. And I think there was something very healing and powerful about that, because I know we make great beer and people love our beer, but there's something else that's going on. And it occurs to me that when we go to other places, we aren't discriminated against per se. That's more rare than it used to be 10, 15 years ago. But none of those places we go to are necessarily geared to us as individuals, as consumers. There's nothing in the music, the artwork, the cuisine, the drink, whatever, unless you're going to a Mexican food restaurant, but that's different. I'm talking about other breweries, other fine restaurants, other malls, whatever. And so you're allowed to go, but you're not the target demographic. So they won't discriminate against you, but there's nothing that necessarily makes you feel welcome. And we realized that when we turned that around and we said, no, we're going to create a place that is welcoming to people with a similar background, I think they'll like it, and they do. And, one of the things that we see is in our social media reviews. We got almost a perfect 5 on Facebook with almost 600 reviews, a lot. And it's not that we're perfect. I'm not bragging. I think people are resonating with us and saying, you know what? Because you represent, because you're down, I'm giving you a 5. And I think that's really important. And it really turned us on to, I think, the value of knowing who your customer is and speaking to them in a way that's meaningful and connecting at the brand level with what we stand for and who they are.
So you're in Border Logan.
Yes.
Why did you decide to open it there?
Barrio Logan made sense. We were invited there, though. So we were off brewing in Otay Mesa, having a good time. And then someone said, hey, you need to come to an art gallery, underground art show in Barrio Logan. I was like, I didn't know. So I go to Barrio Logan, and I go to this underground art show in this warehouse, and beautiful, artwork from Latinos and, multi-ethnic. And there was just a scene that I had never really been part of or experienced, because I'd been in the corporate world at HP, and I can guarantee you I was one of 5 of the 2,000 employees that was Latino. So there wasn't much of a scene at HP. And being in that kind of environment just kind of clicked. I was like, wow, this is what other Latinos are doing. This is how they're expressing the same experiences I had. I want to be part of this. And the most interesting thing that happened is about a week later, we got a phone call and we said, hey, why don't you come on down to Barrio Logan? We think you'd be a perfect fit for this building that we have. And we came down there, we checked it out. I loved it. It was an old building, used to be the Bank of Italy, then Bank of America from the 1920s. So it had a lot of architectural character. And I said, let's do it. We were going to split the place with a taco maker called San Diego Taco Company, and now they're called Salud. They're the best taco now in San Diego. And we were like, but at that time, he was coming up from a taco cart to his first physical place. We were coming up from a small place to our first physical place.
Oh, the perfect marriage.
Whew. And brother, every weekend you talk about workload, I was burning the candles on both ends, Working at HP as an executive and turning my head around and going down to the barrio and slinging beers, And it was so interesting, and it felt very magical in a way coming back to the barrio. I had the homeboys come up to me, from the local gang, and they were like, you know what, we love what you're doing here. Keep doing it. We got your back. And they did, you know.
They did, literally.
No, they were seriously down for what we were trying to do. And the taco guy was doing great tacos. And within 6 months, we blew up so fast that we were running out of beer and we couldn't make enough tacos. So we took off all the signage. No signage, no promotions, just people who know.
Yeah, locals only.
Locals only. And it was funny. What happened was all of a sudden there was this like rumor about this secret brewery in Barrio Logan that you had to be like really cool to know about. And so more people came than when we used to try to promote it. So we've done a lot of things where we've learned things in retrospect. So yeah, so we got slammed. So after 6 months, we're like, you know what? Taco guy, you take over the tasting room and your kitchen, which is what's his. We're gonna move across the street to a much larger facility where we can put in a real brew system, where we can put all the people that are coming in. And so now, right now in Barrio Logan, we have capacity for about 200 people, 5,000 square foot beer garden, 2,500 square foot interior tasting room, and a brew house. And so we make all our beer there, but it was very organic, you know? And I think it was done really because of Barrio Logan. I mean, Barrio Logan shaped us in ways that we weren't expecting. The whole community, it's a very old Latino Chicano
It's
community.
a culture.
Culture.
It's deep rooted.
Very deep. There are a lot of, you know, I'd say Barrio Logan has been Latino since 1881 when it was first subdivided. I mean, literally went from like
Being Mexico to the U.S.
just about. And during the Mexican Revolutionary War, Pancho Villa and all that stuff, a lot of refugees came right across the border thinking that, you know, they'll just be here and then they'll go back when things settle down. Well, they ended up staying. And so a lot of the families there have roots that go back to the 1930s, some all the way back to the 1920s. The wonderful thing is whether you're a gang member, whether you're a social activist, which is a large community social activist, whether you were an artist, because there are a lot of artists, they found a home in our brewery. They found a place that, you know, and it formed us. It told us, it showed us that when you bring the whole package together, the artwork, the music, the vibe, you create something that's really different and unique and interesting. And I think it made us who we are. And now as we expand, we're not trying to take Barrio Logan into other neighborhoods. What we're doing is trying to do the exact same thing. So here in Bell, we're not bringing Barrio Logan, it's a blank slate. We're asking the people of Barrio Logan to come in and fill our tasting room with local music, local artists, local employees, local brewers. I mean, we think every barrio deserves a brewery, and because it's theirs, and they make it into what they want to make it into.
So then you come to Bell. You have success in Barrio Logan, right?
Yes.
And now you come to Bell. What made you come to Bell, the city of Bell?
Yeah, we came to the city of Bell because it had the right combination of everything that we were looking for. It's a great community. I mean, if you drive around, it's very clean. It's well managed despite some of the history that had happened to the community. The leaders right now of the city are really great people. They're really doing great things. We like that, having a very positive relationship with the authorities because they have a lot of say over our hours, how we operate, whether we can come in at all. So having a good relationship was important. Having an architectural jewel like this, the building that we're in, this is over 10,000 square feet in the heart of a very dense Latino community.
Southeast LA.
And in the heart of Southeast LA. So we kind of hope that we can pull little people from East LA, little people from South LA, and the people from Southeast LA, and really try to create something here that's of interest to everybody, and that everybody can be part of.
And inspire others to start their own projects too. Like maybe someone will start their own taco shop finally across from the street from here, or just
we hope
influence
so.
that.
We hope so. So one of the things that was beautiful about Barrio Logan is the whole street on Logan Avenue initially was boarded up when we first started our brewery. I mean, people
Wow.
thought we were absolutely insane going in there. I knew we weren't. And now that street, 5 years later, has reborn with grassroots, raza entrepreneurialism, a coffee shop. The taco shop has won more awards for best taco in San Diego, art galleries. But the difference is, a lot of people say, well, that's gentrification. I say, no, hold up. Gentrification is a whole different thing. This is about our barrio, our people, our families taking economic ownership of our destiny. One of the things about the Chicano movement that a lot of people don't know and need to read up on is point number 2 in the Plan of Aztlán, which is one of the declarations they made back in the 70s, was that we would work towards owning and controlling our economic destiny. We would own the properties that we live in. We would own the businesses that serve the community. We would do the things. And that's one of the things that I think the movement has stalled on, because in over 50 years we haven't. And so we're subject to outsiders coming in and buying our houses that we rent, buying the businesses that we've built, buying the buildings that we've helped create. So, I personally think this is something that's very different. And I would venture to say I call it gentification, which is it's a more people-focused development. And it's about people from within the community working hard and working together to create economic value that we share with the community. It's about preserving. So if you come into our brewery, you'll see the history of Barrio Logan all over our walls. If Starbucks had come into our spot, do you think they would care about the history of Barrio Logan? They wouldn't. It's a rubber stamp approach to business.
Starbucks is down the street and they haven't.
There's
any
not
local art, local music, nothing.
They do nothing. I mean, occasionally they'll donate to a cause, and God bless them. Great. But the thing is, they tend to erase the unique history of every neighborhood wherever they go. They don't care if it's Portland or San Diego or LA. They're just gonna same coffee shop everywhere. When I told you earlier, our tasting rooms are gonna reflect the people and the history of the community. One of the thoughts we had here for Bell, for example, is a lot of people don't know the origins of the Zoot Suit riot. I don't know if you know, but Sleepy Lagoon was just right over here on the LA River. A lot of the families that lived in these ranchos were subject to those things that happened at that time. And no one knows. That's the problem, is if you look across the street, we have the George Bell house. And he gave his name to this community, and here's his home. But before him, where is the Hernandez house? Where's the Garcia house? Where's the history of all the people that helped make this community what it is? And so that's one of the things that we want to try to do. If we can't do it this way, with preserving a home, can we at least preserve the history? Let's talk about some of the families that used to live here. Let's put them up on the walls. Let's have a conversation about the history. And that's what gentrification is don't erase the history, celebrate the history.
Years. What do you see Border X Brewing?
We see Border X in 5 years, hopefully expanding within the next 2 to 6 tasting rooms. We have a business model that is, again, consistent. We go to Latino communities just like the one I'm from, in Escondido or Barrio Logan or Bell. And the thing about Southern California is there's a lot of opportunities. One of the things we love is like Riverside. That's where the Cheech Museum of Chicano Art is going. We'd love to collaborate with him and figure out how we are part of that. But there are a lot of communities that I think are Latino, are up and coming, in that there's a critical mass forming of artists and activists and people who are suddenly flexing some muscles and wanting to create. And we want to be a catalyst. We want to add our granito de arena to that effort so that we can help transform those communities that we're in to succeed. What turns us on isn't so much rich Latinos getting richer. We're more interested, which is fine. We're more about grassroots people finding their way and getting to a place where they can provide for their family.
How do we reinvest into our communities?
Oh, that's easy. The way to reinvest in your communities is, first, can you start a business? You can't start a business, that's fine. Can you buy something from that business? Can you invest in that business as a shareholder, as a loaner, or whatnot? Can you spread good word about that business? Can you form a nonprofit that helps support that community? I mean, when I look at Barrio Logan, we don't succeed just because of the businesses. We succeed because of Chicano Park. That's an entirely nonprofit driven, historic national landmark now that community built 50 years ago. And around that, there are all kinds of different groups that are supporting us. I mean, if I could tell you the number of nonprofits and groups that have come into my brewery and brought their customers and made us successful, I mean, I'm so thankful. I feel like it's like a womb. You know, we weren't ready for prime time. We weren't sure to get where to get money, how to grow. But you're in this community of people supporting each other. You can't fail. You really can't fail because that community is going to hold you up. And so we're grateful, and we're going to look to Bell and our brewery as a catalyst to do the same thing here. Who are the young hustlers? Who are the ones trying to do things that are exciting, that are new, that are scary for them? And how do we form a network of people, professionals and otherwise, that can help us grow? So when we ask people to come in here and do art shows, we don't charge a commission. When we do pop-ups, we don't charge for pop-ups. They win, we win, you know, and we want to take it further. You know, across the street, we're actually going to subdivide that plot of land so that we can have 3 food providers under the roof, and we're going to bring in some containers and try to create spaces for small entrepreneurs. Because most people can't afford a $10,000 rent check every month, but can they swing 1,000? Yeah, probably, you know, depending on their business.
That's a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic idea. How do we change our mindsets? How do we approach not entrepreneurship only, but like success? How do we measure success? People think that not everyone's built to go to Princeton.
Yeah.
Right? You took it from one extreme to the other, right?
Yeah.
You did it through studying, but you fell in love with it.
Yeah.
There are other individuals who have to go to school and they have to go to school.
Yeah.
But they're really in love with art.
Yeah.
They're really in love with fixing cars. They're really in love with creating stuff with their hands. How do we change our mindset from what success is? How do we measure it? Right? How do we change our mindset from that?
You're absolutely right. You know, I think there are a couple layers to that question. There are a lot of great institutions that have been developed in the barrios and neighborhoods that we're around that are creating a pipeline for students to go to college, and God bless them. Thankful they exist. There are a lot of students that were gifted with different talents, and perhaps academics wasn't going to be the path for them. I don't think we do enough to work with those students, those young adults, to help them develop and understand what other opportunities exist for them. I think there are things, so for example, I would love and plan on starting a small entrepreneurial group here. Just to start off, let's start networking. What are you doing? Like, what is your business? How can I help you? How can you help me? How do we help each other? You know, just a real simple thing, and that maybe can flower into something even bigger. Maybe, you know, we can grow it into a business network. Maybe we can bring in loan companies, you know, like a bank or something to tell us. Because what I found is information is so hard sometimes to understand. I mean, I have an MBA, and sometimes to get through all the paperwork and permits is daunting. So it'd be great if we could figure out how to make it easier. And I think so that's one route. And then there's another route, which I call the creative entrepreneur. It's kind of unique requirements. They are starting businesses, but their product is their artwork. You know, one of the things, for example, in Barrio Logan in here, is there are so many great artists doing incredible work, and they may sell that art piece for $500, and they think they're winning. But if they had digitally captured that art piece, sold the original for $500, but then were able to recreate it through digital printing with that same image, and now make it this big, or put it on a coffee cup, now instead of $500, maybe they make $1,500. And they actually make more money on the residuals than they do on the actual artwork itself. That's a whole science. And I've met so many talented artists that don't have either the money to digitize, because it is expensive, or the knowledge or know-how of how to go about doing that. And then the third area I want to help foster and sponsor here in Bell and in Barrio Logan is I think there's a whole digital arts and science area that people need to build skills on. We live in a time now, for the first time, where you can learn a few really key skills that can make a dramatic improvement to your life. If we can take someone who is maybe a decent graphic designer with a sense for technology and art and make them into a website designer or a search engine optimization specialist or a social media marketeer or an Instagram professional or a photographer, all of a sudden they're like plugged into a network and they've got all the digital tools and capabilities to serve the other two groups that I mentioned or to go off and do their own thing. So I personally, this is just coming from me, my heart, is I think those are the three areas I would love to help work with other professionals to create a pipeline for business success, whether you're a mechanic, tortillera. I mean, we live in a time now where basically you can handcraft almost anything, and if you know how to digitally market it, you can find an audience for it. And so that's the same thing with the creative entrepreneurs, same thing with the digital art entrepreneurs. And that's what we'll be focusing on.
Talk to me, and we're gonna end with this. Talk to me about legacy. Talk to me about legacy. Talk to me about what it means to you. Talk to me about community and legacy. Because I think that if we take those old Pueblo community aspect and bring it, that's what we're missing here.
Yeah.
Because, oh, you're from Michoacán, oh, yeah, and everybody's from the rancho, that's cool, but what happened to the culture? What happened to the buenos dias? Hey, how are you? What happened to, I know who the neighbor is. I buy the tortillas from him, but then sometimes I'm gonna go to the local, like he's a butcher, and he's the one that owns the cows. He's the one that owns the restaurant.
Yeah.
Oh, I buy from him, we're missing that.
Totally.
Talk to me about legacy community, and talk to me what it means to you.
I think the legacy that we've helped create in Barrio Lowe has been interesting. You have to have a compelling vision of where we're trying to go. And that vision has to be so strong that when there are issues between neighbors, between entrepreneurs, whatever, the vision always supersedes everything. If we're all bought into this vision of cooperation, collaboration, you get beyond, it gives you perspective to understand if someone said something about you or your business and it hurt. Then how are you going to react? Well, my vision is bigger than this petty little bruise to my ego. I'm going to let that go. It doesn't matter. When you don't have a vision that drives you and where you want to go in your life, those petty little ego bruises become what your life is about. You're just bouncing from one ego bruise to the other and reacting violently in some cases to those things. At the end of the day, those things don't matter. It's just noise that distract you from what's important in life. So I'd love to create a vision that I think all of us can be part of, that supersedes those ego bruises, that allows us to come together. And then second, I'd love to cultivate the gratitude that people should feel being part of that community, because I feel blessed. I feel personally blessed for what happened in Barrio Lowe in the last 5 years. And there are things that have happened that I never imagined could have happened in my own life. And I think even as we come into Bell, there are things that are going to happen, and people I'm going to meet, and communities, and we're going to build together, and personalities. And it's very organic. And I think, having a vision and having gratitude are two things that help build, I think, a community that can overcome the petty differences that tear us apart. Who cares we care where you come from because it's interesting, but it shouldn't divide us from coming together. Whether you came from Michoacán or Durango or San Salvador or Guatemala, it doesn't matter. What do you want to create? What's more important to you, where you came from or where you're going?